It's no secret the popularity of the Trudeau government has taken a beating in recent months. Support for the federal Liberals has been slipping since the summer of 2023, when Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives have led in the polls since then, with a general election expected by October of 2025. Will the incumbent government answer the bell, or will they stay down for the count? These are the questions raised in a new book. Here to talk about Justin Trudeau on the ropes, governing in troubled times, is journalist and longtime political pundit Paul Wells. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Appreciate this very much. Paul, you're quick to warn the reader. I offer no prediction of the outcome, but I can't look away. Why can't we look away?
Well, in my case, it's because it's politics at the highest level, and I've always been a sucker for that sort of thing. Uh, you've certainly rarely had a prime minister this unpopular this far before an election who has stuck around. I mean, typically when it gets this bad, people start to take walks in snow and find something else to do with their time. Um, and and yet Trudeau says he's totally going to lead his party into the next election. I'm inclined to believe him. And so the first question, the question that I started the book with is, why the hell would he stick around? And the answer is he kind of likes being in trouble. He's been in trouble before and it worked out well for him.
The name of the book is On the Ropes. There are boxing metaphors throughout. You argue the crucible of Trudeau's time in power is the Fight for the Cure celebrity boxing match between him and Conservative Senator Patrick Brazeau in 2012. What happened? Why is this so pivotal?
So he did the match for two reasons. One, he was turning 40. It was a little bit of a midlife crisis. And the other is he had a lot of time on his hands. I mean, the Liberals were in third place for the first time in history. There were very few strong MPs. And yet his leader, Bob Rae, hadn't given him much to do. So he might as well go and do a charity boxing match. Um, Almost anyone who remembers the match will remember that Pat Brazeau was a very formidable looking guy with like arms like tree trunks and serious dude, and Trudeau less so. And so, especially among conservative members of the Harper government, it was just assumed that Trudeau was going to get his teeth handed to him. They were crowing on Twitter the afternoon of the fight, and then big surprise, he won. And it wasn't luck, or it wasn't one lucky punch. He has always claimed that it was because he had been boxing for years as a hobby, and that he had trained very seriously for months, and that he had strategized, and he still mentions that to this day. Otherwise, I would not have written a book about a boxing match. But he says to friends, look, I've been in trouble before. I've had everyone count me out before, and it worked out okay. Not just that boxing match, but the elections of 2015, 2019, 2021, which is why look, I don't know. I'm not sure he's brimming with confidence about an election coming up, but I think he likes his chances better than most people do.
So he thinks he still has one more rope-a-dope, as you say, left in him.
Yeah, he's inclined to test that hypothesis. And again, I mean, I say I'm not in the mood to make predictions. It's because, like anyone in my line of work, I've made predictions that didn't work out too well. I don't know whether he'll be there. I don't know if he knows whether he'll be there leading the party at the next election. But I absolutely believe that right now, today, his plan is to stick around and lead the party into the next election, come what may.
Is part of it that he may think that he doesn't have something to hang his hat on as a legacy? What will people think of the Trudeau government if it ended in 2025? What would it be remembered for? That the COVID response, legalizing marijuana?
Yeah, I mean, a return to big activist government, which for a lot of people is sufficient in itself. Um, some signature policy initiatives like the Canada Child Benefit and a sort of top up to the Canada Pension Plan. He will be tremendously excited that they brought in $10 daycare coast to coast, although it's exceedingly patchy in its applications. It's real hard to get one of those $10 spots. And a few other things. But it's really striking that the extent to which what motivates him clearly is pure political survival at this point, and the strong sense that the other guy must not be allowed to win. It's not as though Trudeau has a sort of a burning policy project that he can't wait to implement. I mean, the recent budget that they spent nearly a month curtain raising in a national tour before they brought the budget down is basically all right, we'll give you about a quarter of what Poilievre is promising, and surely that's enough. And you know that it's not like Trudeau has a big thing that he wants to do, except win again and make sure that Poilievre doesn't.
Now, you talk quite a bit about Pierre Poilievre, and as you point out, the consensus about the Trudeau government is that it's good at getting the big things right, being renegotiating NAFTA or navigating COVID-19. But is it the case that Canadians would be tired of this government no matter who was waiting in the wings?
I think there's a lot to that. I actually expected more people to be bugged by this than what I've heard so far. This book does not pay much attention to the opponents that Trudeau has beaten in the past or than the one he's facing now. It's very much a book. It's only 100 pages long, and it's concentrated. It's very much a book that concentrates on Justin Trudeau. But part of my argument is not that he's getting beaten by the extraordinary tactical genius of Pierre Poilievre, because Pierre Poilievre, after all, has been around in our politics for almost 20 years. It's that he's beating himself up. He is himself disappointing people who would normally be Liberal supporters by not paying as much attention to the economy as Liberals often hope that a Liberal government will, by starting a whole bunch of projects that go badly, or announcing a whole bunch of projects that never get done. It's not a government that even its own supporters feel they can rely on, and I think that's a big part of why he's in trouble now.
As you put it, Trudeau's government can't stop announcing bright new days, even though it seems increasingly unable to deliver. When do you think voters realize this?
Something happened last summer that I'm still not entirely sure I've got an explanation for. Um, although support for Justin Trudeau as prime minister on a straight preferred prime minister question has been slipping away in dribs and drabs for about 5 years. He has had until last summer, he's had better months and worse months, and periods when he looked like he was in real trouble, like the SNC-Lavalin scandal, and then retrenchment. But they went from being essentially tied with the Conservatives last year to now being 20 points behind with no evidence that they can bring that back. And I'm still not sure what specific thing it was. I mean, he had a big cabinet shuffle that ended up feeling like it changed nothing. Last summer was when he said that housing is not primarily a federal responsibility. But it feels like a straw that snapped the camel's back thing. And if I had to put a name on it, it would be people finally started to realize that he wasn't going to clean up his act or reform his approach to get another mandate. He's just going to be who he is. And that always forces a choice on the other party. Okay, is that enough, or is that what I'm looking for? And I think once the prospect of a new, better Justin Trudeau went away definitively, people were like, all right, well, now I have to decide how I feel about that. And some voters clearly don't like it.
You also say one must always take care not to become what one deplores. Is it a case that the Trudeau government has become that, what it once hated?
I mean, on a bunch of things, like they used to complain that the Harper government was secretive and that it enforced marching orders on everyone around, and yet he's done precisely that. He used to believe that he could breathe a looser, more free-flowing attitude towards political debate. That the strict control of the Harper days was silly and that we didn't need it. But he's become very much like that, and they accuse all the time, with justification, the Poilievre conservatives of uh, producing a more venomous, polarized political debate. But try convincing any liberal that anything any conservative says is true. The liberals are in there swinging for polarization as much as anyone else, and so they're characters in our and actors in our increasing political polarization, not just merely scandalized spectators.
In the end, you say the boxing match was always a bad metaphor. Could it be that Canadians, as you say, deserve a prime minister who can do more than simply wear out his opponent?
Yeah, and Trudeau has often talked in more optimistic tones about what Canadians deserve in a leader. Um, that's why I think he should never have been as pleased with the boxing metaphor as he is, because the boxing metaphor essentially is just wait until everyone realizes I'm better than they thought. It's passive. It leads you to uh, not pay enough attention to your own shortcomings, because the main shortcoming in the system is everyone else doesn't realize how great you are, and so that tends to um, breed complacency in somebody who takes that attitude. And I think that explains. Like, I used to be really impressed by Justin Trudeau because he seemed very self-aware. He knew his own weaknesses. He knew his own limitations. He knew who he could depend on and who he couldn't in his supporters. And lately, I see less of that Trudeau. I see less of that guy who's insightful about himself. And lately, he seems awfully inclined to swallow a bunch of cliches about himself that are obviously not true. And that's not a great way to keep your edge before a fight.
As you say, this book is 100 pages. Is there the possibility of a longer work about the Trudeau years from you?
No, but my friend Stephen Marr has a book about Trudeau coming out in a couple of weeks called The Prince. I haven't read it yet, but it's about 3 times as long as mine. So people could use mine as an appetizer and then get Steve's when it comes out.
All right, we'll leave it there. The name of the book is Justin Trudeau on the Ropes, Governing in Troubled Times. My thanks to author Paul Wells.
Thanks for having me.